This is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today's date is June 17th, 2017. I'm at the Chilocco Annual Reunion, just north of Newkirk, doing interviews with Chilocco alumni and military veterans. And I'm talking to Woody King. And we're going to talk a little bit about his time in Chilocco and a little bit about his time in the military. Yeah, that's the most formal this thing's going to get at all. So I like to start with just a little bit of background. Well, now that I know your family intimately after an hour and a half, but no, I'd like to just a little bit like, who are your parents? Do you have any siblings? Where were you born? Just some background information.
I was born in Claremore, Oklahoma. Claremore Indian Hospital. Raised in Wewoka, Oklahoma. My parents, my dad was Wilson Kinney. My mother is Jenny Chilocco Kinney. And I'm one of 12 children, of which my mother and dad both went to Chilocco. My older brother and sister both went to Chilocco.
So when did your mom and dad go to Chilocco? What time period?
In the 30s.
In the 30s?
My dad attended Chilocco but did not graduate there. He had to leave to take care of his parents, and he ended up graduating from Bacon. But my mother is a 1938 graduate of Chilocco.
I see. Did they know each other from Chilocco?
No.
No.
And my older brother is a 1959 graduate. My older sister is a 1962 graduate. I attended Chilocco as a postgraduate from 1961 to 63.
So how old were you then when you came into Chilocco?
When I came to Chilocco, I was 18.
So you were 18. Okay. Well, help me understand, because that's sort of an unusual thing. What made you decide to come to Chilocco?
Come to Chilocco?
Yeah.
I guess you might say that I'm one of those that didn't know what they were going to do when they finished high school. I know that today everybody knows what they're going to do. I was not one of those. I did well in school. My counselors always thought I'd go to college. You might say I was a rebel, and I said, no, I'm not.
Nice.
So when I finished, I actually went to BIA to see the social worker about going to Haskell. And they told me there was no room for me at Haskell, but they told me I could go to Chilocco. And then she gave me a list of trades that I could take. And believe it or not, I just went down the list, took my finger, and said, I'll take printing.
Really?
That's how I chose my vocation. So anyway, I came to Chilocco to learn a trade.
Okay. So that's interesting that you have all this family history there, but that's not necessarily why you ended up coming here.
No. Well, that's because back then, I don't know if you're that familiar, we started out going to boarding schools. I started out from the beginning. First 5 years I went to. Started at Jones Academy and I went to Carter Seminary.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
So you weren't in the Wewoka public school system?
Or 6th grade.
So you were in Jones?
Jones, I was only at Jones one semester, and then I went to Carter Seminary for 5 years.
Okay.
And then they told us that we were better off at home because we had both parents, and my dad worked, and I think they forgot that there's 12 of us. But anyway, they wouldn't let us go to boarding school until later on, whatever. That was my first time I could go back to a boarding school, was because I needed to learn a trade. Then I had a reason to go.
Yeah. Did you want to go back to boarding school before that?
I didn't really give it much thought, just that I can remember. I had to do something, and that's what I did.
Yeah. Well, when you transitioned from the boarding school back into public school, how was that? Do you remember?
It was always an adjustment. I mean, now that I reflect back on that, because in one situation you're all with all Indian people, and then you are then thrown into the public schools, which is different.
Right.
And then when I went back to Chilocco, then I had to readjust again. Here I am again with all Indians. And like I said, when I reflect on it as an adult, I can see where I had to make some changes.
Were the changes in just the way that you interacted with each other?
Primarily.
Okay.
Primarily.
Yeah. So were your two older siblings were the only ones that came to Chilocco as
Yes.
students then?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's a reason why your other siblings didn't end up after when you were the first three. There's still 9 left, right? So did any of them end up doing boarding school stints, or they all stayed in the public school system?
They stayed in public schools.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. So when you did decide, when you couldn't get into Haskell and they sent you over to Chilocco, do you remember, like, did you care? Were you interested in that? Was it just?
Really, well, you got to realize I'm a teenager, and my cousins that I grew up around back home,
Yeah.
they all went to Haskell. They all got to go to Haskell. So I wanted to go to Haskell. That was the reason I wanted to go to Haskell. It wasn't because of the school.
Got it.
It was because of who was going there.
So did you know anybody at Chilocco that you thought would know?
When I got here, yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know they were here. But yes, I knew.
So who did you end up knowing?
I knew several.
Were they family members or just
No,
people
they
from the
were.
community?
We grew up in a church,
Uh-huh.
and our churches back home, they belong to an association. They're primarily all Indian churches, and so I had known. You grow up seeing the same people at different conferences, what we call associational meetings, and of course we camp out, and it's one of those 3-4 day meetings, you know. So I got to know a lot of other
I see.
people my age because we attended Bible study classes together.
Was that the same church that, so I was just talking to your cousin Charles Sequoia, that you know him as. Is that the same church that his grandfather he was a Methodist?
He's a Methodist, I'm a Baptist.
You're a Baptist, so they were two different
groups.
I got it, okay. I was just curious.
But it's probably the same type.
Yeah. There's a lot of those.
It's just different denomination.
Yeah, okay.
So the guys that I ended up rooming with at Chilocco were guys that I already knew. Two of them were guys I already knew.
That doesn't sound terrible. Well, I don't know. Maybe you didn't like them. So do you remember when you first went to Chilocco then? Like, and you were learning all this? Do you kind of even remember maybe your first day?
No, I don't recall that.
That's fine. I don't think I would either.
No, I don't.
So when you went there and you arbitrarily chose printing, did you end up liking it?
Yes, I did.
Really?
I did very well at it.
So you were there for 2 years learning the trade?
Yes.
So what would be some of the things that you would do to learn, to be able to get skills?
Of course, you met George England here at the...
Oh, yes.
Well, his parents were my instructors.
Oh, okay.
And they were very good at what they did. And I learned pretty much the whole, they moved me from one, because there are different types of things that you do in printing. And so I pretty much learned most of all the different types of skills that you have to know in the printing trade. And I was allowed, because I was a post-grad, and there was 4 or 5 of us that were post-grads, and then the rest of them were high school students that would come in during either the morning or afternoon. And Mr. England pretty much allowed me to do kind of a leadership type of thing with others, you know, and and if there were people that came in that wanted to look around, he'd have me show them around and, you know, teach them or show them what we needed, that type of thing. So I learned the trade pretty well, abroad, you know, in a broad way. So when I got out of service, I worked as a printer for 10 years. So I actually used my trade.
You did?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And even like after you did military service, and that was even pretty far removed from your training.
Yes, it was 4 years.
Yeah. You still retained that.
Yeah, and Mr. England, I maintained contact with him on a personal. I knew where he was, and he had already told me that when I got out, he'd help me find work, and I maintained contact with him. And when I got out of service, then I did contact him, and he lived in Independence, Missouri. And he asked me if I would come there, and I said, yes, I would. And so I went there, and he found me a job.
Interesting.
So I worked there for some time.
So was that pretty common for the Englands to
I think so.
do that?
I mean, they would help their students, you know, because he had a lot of contacts with people in the industry.
Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty neat. Did you have much interaction besides in the classroom with the high school students?
With the high school students, well, yeah, we live in the same dorm, you know, so yes, I knew who they were.
It's all the same thing. You shared the campus.
Yeah.
Did you have a similar schedule that they
Right.
did?
Same schedule.
All that, yeah.
So.
So you were here 2 years. Did you have anything to do with the National Guard unit at all here on campus?
No,
Not at all. So what led you? You came here to get a trade. So what led you to the military then?
I always knew I was going to go.
Really?
Yes. My dad was in World War II and fought in the Philippines and, you know, the islands there. And so I knew that. I just assumed I would go in the military. And of course we had the draft back then. And when I left Chilocco, after I'd been here 2 years, I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I knew my greetings letter was coming. So I said, I don't want to be drafted. And so I volunteered, I enlisted.
Yeah.
And that way I got to choose what branch of service I wanted to go to.
So tell me about that. How did you make that choice?
You mean tell my funny side?
Yeah. You can tell funny and serious sides for both things if you want. Funny
When people ask me this is what I tell them. I didn't know how to swim. I still don't know how to swim. I checked out the branches of service. I said, if I go in the Army, I'm going to have to know how to swim. I'm going to get in the water somewhere. If I go in the Marines, I'm going to have to know how to swim. If I go in the Navy, I'm going to have to know how to swim. I said, Air Force, the chances are kind of slim. So I'm going in the Air Force.
Is that true?
It's
Your
true.
aversion to water?
Yeah.
Well.
You've never heard that one, have
No. Mostly just for the Navy, but I've never heard it in earnestness. That's funny. So did you like the Air Force?
Yes,
You worked out. You didn't have to
it
swim.
worked out.
What did you do when you went in? So what, like, walk me through like enlisting and where did you go after that?
I enlisted, and I went to Lackland Air Force Base. To tell you the truth, when I enlisted and I came to Oklahoma City, I enlisted at Alumni, and my recruiter, of course, told me what day I would be leaving, and it was over the Labor Day holiday, so I couldn't leave till Tuesday. And, I came to Oklahoma City and went through all the physical and all this, but to be honest with you, I didn't know I was leaving that day. I didn't tell my parents that I was leaving. And 4 o'clock that afternoon, I'm raising my hand and taking my oath, and they're taking us to the airport. So I stopped on the way and dropped my card and said, I'm gone.
Wow.
That's how they found out where I was at.
No. When you saw them the next time, did they say anything about that?
Well, it was Christmas by then.
Oh.
You know, several months later.
Yeah.
But
what did you think you were gonna do that day?
I didn't know. I had no idea.
So where did they take you? Did they? I guess
You got to realize now, I'm 20 years old. I'm pretty free to do whatever I want to. I'm independent. You know, my parents aren't telling me what to do or where to go.
Get that, but they usually.
And I've already been gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, once I left at 18, I never went back to live at home again.
I see. So you did. There wasn't a period in between Chilocco and
No.
enlisting that you were sort of back at home, like
No.
it was just.
I went home for 2 weeks
So.
and joined the Air Force.
And then was out.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that by that point your parents aren't watching everything you're doing, but when they think you might come home for dinner and you don't show up, that's.
No, they're not going to worry about it.
No.
I'm an adult as far as they're concerned.
All right.
At that. Because like I said, I never went home once I left came to Chilocco. I worked during the summer here at Chilocco.
You stayed on
So
campus?
I stayed pretty much year round for 2 years.
So what was your job during the summer then?
Same thing.
Still just printing?
Working in the print shop.
Yeah.
Because we did all the forms and everything for the school. You know, that had to be used. So we did the printing at school.
That's the thing I think a lot of people who, who don't know much about this campus, it was so self-sufficient. I mean, even the things of, we print our own material to use in school, right? In the classrooms and in the admin office.
So we printed all that material for them. So.
Got it. Huh. So you enlisted, or you got deployed, essentially. You went to basic training at
I went
that
to
point?
basic training at Tech School at Lackland.
Okay, that's when you were in Lackland.
San Antonio.
Yeah. So do you remember getting started there? Do you remember did you get bussed down there, I guess?
We flew.
Oh, did you? Oh, Air Force. Of course you.
No, we flew commercial.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was my first airplane ride.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. That's the first time I'd ever been on.
A little taste of what's to come. So
it was kind of fun. I mean, we rode one of them old prop jets from here to Dallas, and then got on a jet from there to San
Antonio. How did you find military life when you first started then, when you moved into boot camp?
It was pretty much, I think, the fact that I grew up in boarding schools, basically. I knew how to fix my bed. I knew how to take care of myself, where others did not, where moms had been having to do it for them. You know, I was already past that stage. Yeah. And so it was not difficult for me to just adjust to military. Just because I'm already used to kind of a regimented life, you know, in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm used to standing in line for chow and all that.
I'm curious about that too, because when you talked about moving from the boarding schools when you were younger back to public schools before you went to Chilocco. Was that one of the transition, is going from a sort of regimented day in life?
No, I think that it for me, it was more the fact that I guess you might say when I look at Indian people, we have our own way of interacting with one another. And sometimes other races don't understand us. You know what? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
I do. I watch y'all. It's great.
And so when I went to public school, then some of the things I'm accustomed to doing or saying to another person, I can't do that anymore.
I see.
I have to do things differently. Mm-hmm. That's why I say I think you have to adjust to that.
Right.
And then when I came back, and I'm back among Indian people again, then I got to readjust. And that's what I see when I reflect back, is that's the kind of things I had to change.
So how did that translate whenever you went into the military? Because you're still in the, it's not a group home, but it's that same sort of feel.
And I think a lot of that is still there. Mm-hmm. Is that you know, I'm among blacks and whites, and you know, and even some Asian, you know. So we're all different, and I think that to me, when I say I adjusted well, is because of that. That I'd already had to do that.
I see. Were there many other Native Americans with you whenever you were at boot camp?
There was only one.
Really? Did you know that person?
I met him, would you believe, at the bus station when I was getting ready to go take my physical. We met at the bus station, walked together to the motel, to Robert's Hotel in Oklahoma City.
Really?
And so he and I ended up, he was from Ada, and he and I went through boot camp together.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So did you all become friends then?
Not necessarily. We knew one another. Mm-hmm. Of course, you know, there you're doing your own thing type of thing. You know, you're not necessarily hanging out together and just having fun type of thing. You're not doing that. Mm-hmm. And so, but I'd always wonder what happened to him. I never saw him after we left boot camp. And would you believe I finally saw him about 2 years ago? His wife happened to be friends with my sister, and they sang in a group together. And I just happened to ask her if she knew this guy. That's my husband. I said, oh, it is. I said, and I told her our story, and she said, he's right over there.
Did you go talk to him?
Yeah, she brought him over and introduced him.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, it had been, what, 60 years, about 50 years?
Yeah. Did you all have the same memories about boot camp? Did you talk at all about
You know what? We didn't even talk about that.
You didn't even talk about it? Just what you've been doing since?
Yeah. Just normal stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. But that's interesting. Well, so if you and he were the only Indians down there at boot camp.
Well, in our group, our flight.
Oh, just your specific group that went in together.
Yeah.
Did you feel? I mean, that's a pretty heavy minority. Did you feel like that was an issue, or did you feel singled out in any ways, or?
No, I didn't. In a way, my experience in the military, being Indian, mm-hmm. worked to my advantage in many ways. And by that, what I mean is, like, I think it was on the second or third day after we reported for our basic training. We call them TIs, training instructors. He's the one that's marching us around and barking at us all the time. Mm-hmm. He pulled me aside and said, "You're my first squad leader." So I became first squad leader on I don't remember the second or third day of camp. And which means I'm the first guy up here right by him, mm-hmm. so to speak. in the front row. And everything we do, guess who goes first? Me.
Were you happy about that, or
It didn't bother me.
it's nothing?
No.
Why do you think he did that?
But I think what I've seen in many times is, I think people think that Indians have a sense that, I say a sixth sense,
Yeah.
of doing things. And many times we're put in those positions because they think we're something different when we're not.
So sort of the stereotypes that are out
Right.
there about
Yeah.
what an Indian is, that
Yeah.
sort of mysticness that some people put around it, then is what
Yeah.
you're... Did you see that a lot, really?
Yeah, I saw that occasionally,
Yeah.
you know, because that wasn't the only time during my military that I saw that happen.
So you said that you think that some of that was to your advantage.
Yeah, because even there, I look at the funny side. Because I was the first squad leader when we had KP, I marched the guys to the chow for KP. I did not have to stay. I went back to the barracks and slid under the bunk and went to sleep.
There's some good leadership skills you got there.
And when it was time to go get them, I slid back out, went back after, brought them back to the barracks.
Wow.
So that's why I say there's some advantages there.
Yeah. Well, so I'll be curious about where those sorts of points pop up. You know, as your time in the military went on. But what did you do after basic training then? Where'd you go?
I got put into Air Police School, and I chose when you're going through all the testing prior to going to basic. They test you and they give you these scores. One is general, administrative, and electronic thing. I don't remember what they call it. Anyway, my highest score was in administrative. And but I had printing. I'd already had 2 years of training, and of course they told me that they could get me into printing. But it happened to be in the general field. And when I did that, then they stuck me in the police. And then I could never get out of the Air Police because they termed it a critical field. So I never got into printing public service.
You didn't get to follow through with that, but
No.
So they put you in Air Police. You said that they kept you in a critical field because that's explain that to me. What do you mean by that?
By that, I guess the manpower, they had to keep the manpower, and other than that, I don't know why, but once you got in, you couldn't get out of it.
No. So were you on patrol? Were you like actively part of the police?
First 2 years of my military, I was in what was called security, and what we did there is we were responsible for the aircraft. We guard them, guard the aircraft. We guard the perimeters. The base I was at was what we call a SAC base, Strategic Air Command Base, and we had nuclear weapons. So we had to maintain security for the weapons. If they brought them out to load into the planes or to download, we were there. We had to escort them everywhere they went.
Yeah.
So we were responsible for that. So that was the security part. I actually, after my 2 years, we had what we call a canine unit. This is where they had the dogs And there were probably 8 or 10 guys with handlers with dogs in that unit. And I actually volunteered to go to that. And I had just completed 2 years of service at that time, because I remember it was like October '65. And they brought me in and they said, we can't transfer you into that unit. And of course, I had to ask why, and they said, because you've got to have 2 years left in your enlistment before we can do that. So they didn't let me in. But believe it or not, God looked after me, because by April of '66, which was roughly 5-6 months after this, all of our canine units were dead. They were gone. And they put me in what we call base police, which is the law enforcement department. So I got out of security into base police. So I spent the remainder of my enlistment in base police. This is where we actually patrol and check the evidence.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if when they told you that you had up 2 years in, were they trying to get you to extend your...
I think it had to do with the training.
Oh, okay.
They invested training.
So it really, you didn't feel it was like a...
No, I didn't think it was
trying to negotiate you back in to
No.
stay? Okay.
No, the part that I was told I'd have to extend for was that, okay, when I got out of tech school, I was sent back to Oklahoma. I don't know if you know where Clinton Sherman was. It's no longer there. It's out of here between Clinton and Elk City, in western Oklahoma. Burns Flight.
Okay.
And I did not want to come back to Oklahoma when I joined the service. That was not my intent. My intent was I wanted to see something different. I mean, I'd never been in western Oklahoma at this point in my life. I didn't know something was west of Oklahoma City. So I wanted to get out of Oklahoma, and they sent me back to Oklahoma. And so I went to our administration personnel and put in a worldwide volunteer statement. I said, I'll go anywhere. Just send me.
Just get me
Yeah.
out of Oklahoma.
But it didn't work out. And then I was told that after I had less than a year left, that if I got a transfer now, I'd have to extend for it. I said, nope, I'm not extended. So I went over there to remove my volunteer statement at that point.
Oh yeah, and just finished your time
Just
out.
finished my enlistment.
Yeah. So was that when you were doing base patrol at that time?
Yeah, I
Out
was
there.
on base place.
Yeah.
And I did well in there. By that I mean I was a flight leader, what we call a flight leader. I was the desk sergeant. I was a E4 by then, and so I had seniority and I sat over a lot of the others.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I had a hard life.
Was there a point where you actually thought about extending?
No, because I didn't want to stay in the field I was in. The only way that I would have done that is if I could get into something else. And they do have what they call a re-enlistment, talk with you. And they did tell me they would do that. But I told them, I said, you lied to me once. You're not going to get a second chance. I'm gone.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that was the right thing for you to do, looking back?
I think it was. Yes, it did.
Yeah. So you got your 4 years in, and you didn't end up. That was a volatile time to be in the military in general.
Yes, yeah. I think about that sometimes, like particularly when you guys asked to interview us, is that when I went in 1963, if you look at the state of the world at that point, in 1961 they had just built the Berlin Wall. 1962 they had the Bay of Pigs. Fall of '62, I think, they had the Cuban Missile Crisis. So this Cold War thing was in full force with Russia. So, and then the Vietnam thing was heating up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a peaceful time.
But not just if you were out in the world, but stateside too. It seems like.
Yeah, there's a lot of protests.
Well, that for sure. Did that impact your time at all?
It didn't impact me, no. I didn't think very much of it. When you're the guy over there trying to serve your country, and you got all these guys over here that are protesting, and to me, they're not contributing anything. You know, it's not very comfortable.
Yeah. But even your position where you were in security and you were on a lot of these SACs, right? And there's nuclear weapons and that, I mean, that you bring up a good point in a good context that it was the Cold War. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean,
see, that our responsibility as a base, we kept, I think there were 8 or 10 aircraft on alert 24 hours a day. And they're loaded. They're not just waiting to be loaded. They're ready to go. And then we, as a base, had to participate in what was called Chrome Dome. I don't think I'm giving away anything away. I've heard it on James Bond.
Then it must be.
I've heard our same codes on James Bond, so I guess it doesn't make any difference. But it was an operation called Chrome Dome, and which means a number of aircraft, B-52s like we had to be in the air at 24 hours a day. And our base would take their turn, and we'd send them off. One would stay up there, 4 hours or whatever, and come back, and another one take up.
So what was their job?
They're protecting their skies.
Just watching for...
They're ready to go wherever they need to go.
How long did that last?
That would last maybe for the base, maybe 30 days or so, and then probably another base takes. But that's what we, that was our responsibility.
Yeah. So you knew that you had an inkling you were going to be in a short term, but you had a job that was pretty, I mean, you were around some serious stuff still, right?
Yes.
So did you think much about that? Like what you were doing in the context of what was going on in the world at that time?
No.
No?
I tell my wife and kids this. When you're their age, you're not married. I mean, I wasn't anyway. I'm single. And you just do it. You're told to do this and you do it. You don't really question why you're doing it. I guess I wasn't serious. My mind wasn't serious enough to try to figure all this out. It's now that I think about it, not when it was going on.
Right. No, I can understand that. I was just curious. And also, I mean, I have no idea what you knew at the time versus what you know now looking backwards, right? So when you were just basically putting one foot in front of the other and following orders, did you have a lot of other information other than this is what your job is today?
Well, we knew what we were doing. By that, I mean the overall mission type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We knew what was going on.
Yeah. Now it seems like it would be heavy. I mean, I totally get what you're saying, that when you're 20 and 21, you just do it. It just seems like that's a heavy responsibility to be part of, but looking, that's only from us, like a real adult perspective, right?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, so when it was time to get out, what's the first thing that you did then? Like when you said, I'm done, I'm not re-enlisting, stop trying to talk me.
This is where I knew that, first of all, I grew up working. My dad taught me to work. Mm-hmm. We were always taught that you're going to take care of yourself. My dad taught me, you take care of your family. These are things that you might say, instilled. And his thing was, you're either working or you're in school, one or the other. Mm-hmm. So when I got done, I knew I was going to go to work. I mean, there's nobody going to provide a home for me. This is something I was going to have to take care of myself. So I knew I was going to have to go to work. So this is when I was probably out of the service maybe a couple of weeks when I contacted Mr. England and let him know that I needed a job. Mm-hmm. And this is when he invited me to come in.
So had he left Chilocco by that point then? Or was he still retired?
Yeah, he was retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have to spend too much time talking about that, but I'm curious. So you stayed in that job for a long time, but was it an easy transition for you to make and back into printing or printing full time?
What, from the Air Force to printing?
Yeah.
I don't remember it being difficult. By that I mean, I was getting ready to get married.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I got married in, I got out in September, we got married in November.
Where did you meet your wife?
There. She came to Chilocco also.
Oh yeah?
She's a graduate of Chilocco.
Did you meet her while you were here on campus?
Yes and no. I knew her brother better than I knew her. Her brother was a roommate to some friends of mine. Okay. And so when I would go down to their room, he was there, type of thing. So I knew her brother. And so that's kind of what was my connection to her. I knew she was his sister, mm-hmm. and because she's a bit younger than me, mm-hmm. So that was kind of about the extent of our knowledge of one another at school, and
so where did you meet her if you were
at Clinton?
Oh, she was out there.
Yeah, that's her hometown. Oh. And so that's where I met her, and we got to know one another.
I see. So when you definitely needed a job then.
Yes. Yes.
So you all picked up and moved to Missouri then? Or you picked up and moved to Missouri?
I moved to Missouri and I stayed there maybe 6 weeks and I came back. Okay. And came back to Oklahoma City and found a job here in Oklahoma City.
Huh. And
it was not hard to find a job.
In printing?
In printing.
Really?
Uh-huh.
So who were you working for? What were you doing?
First job I had was, it was called box printing. We printed these big old carton boxes, mm-hmm. which I hated. But then I kept looking for a job that I wanted, even mm-hmm. while I'm working. I learned that about life. You don't need one job without knowing where you're going to the next one. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I found the job that I wanted, and that's the one that I ended up staying with for 10 years.
What did you do after the 10 years?
I started college. I was 32 years old by then, and I was 32 when I first took my first college course. And by then I had my wife, I had 2 kids, and but I decided that I didn't want to do printing the rest of my life because I was a pressman, and I'm running fairly large presses, and I'm lifting all these big heavy papers to load and all. I didn't know about technology that's going to come that's going to do it all automatic now. But I looked around Oklahoma City. I was in the union, and I knew a lot of the craftsmen in the trade around Oklahoma City. And what I noticed was that there was nobody over 40 years old that was running presses anymore. They either found something else to do, they changed vocation, changed their work, or they formed their own business. They did one or the other. So I decided then that it's time to go back to school. So that's when I started taking some college courses at night. And I went to what was then called Oscar Rose Junior College in Midwest City, which is now Rose State. I stayed there till I was 3 hours short of associate degree, and I decided that wasn't my goal, and I wasn't going to go back for the next semester for 3 hours. So then I went to what was then called Central State, UCO today, and I finished my bachelor's at Central. And then I decided, well, why not get a master's? So I stayed out one semester, then I started on my master's program, and I finished my master's program in 1981.
So at what point, how old were you then when you got done?
I was 39. It took me 7 years from the time I started to the time I finished.
What were you majoring in?
Business, and my master's in business administration.
So all the way through? What, did you have a goal in mind for?
Well, I changed, this is where I changed. I went to work for Indian Health Service after I'd been printing for 10 years. This is when I changed and went to work for Indian Health Service, which is a federal agency. And I'm one of those that don't have any sense, or I've been blessed, let me put it that way. I took a job with Indian Health Service on a 6-month temporary for something like $2.50 an hour. And I don't know, I just took the chance and I did it. Of course, I was going to school, so I was getting a GI Bill, so that helped where I could make ends meet and we could still live. But as it turned out, I got a permanent job after a few months, and I was able to, you might say, get my promotions, do things, and I finally, within, when I look back now, it was actually a short period of time, I got into management, and I spent my last 15 years as director of HR.
Wow. That's a big change from where you started.
Yeah.
When you were working for Indian Health Services for that period of time, well, I'm curious about a lot of things with that too, because they do a lot of veteran services too. Was that something that you had any interest to get into, or things you touched on? Because that's 2 different parts of your life, right? Like your veteran service and working there.
It didn't really, those two never really came into play,
No.
not with one another. Because, of course, when I got employed, I had veterans preference, you know. But from that point, it never came into play. Of course, the federal government has a lot of programs that we had to administer that where you give preference to veterans nowadays, you know, type of thing that we had to comply with. But personally, it didn't affect me.
Yeah. Well, from the HR standpoint too. That's interesting. So did you enjoy working at the Indian Health Services?
Yes, I did.
Did you? What did you like about it?
Getting to help people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by that I mean from both ends. When I say that, getting to help people, of course we're in a medical business. We're trying to, you know, meet people's medical needs, and so that part is good. But on the HR side, I found many opportunities to help people get employed. I found many opportunities to counsel. You know, of course, many times we are dealing with people that, just like any other company or business, that had problems. And by that I mean, whether we're doing performance or conduct, you know, humans are humans. And but I think the satisfaction I got was when I saw somebody that we gave a second chance to, and they made it.
Yeah. Did you get to do that often?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
And as an example, I attend church in Oklahoma City, Glory Baptist Church, and a few years ago, a lady came on a Wednesday night that I knew from, you know, when I was working, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, Woody, I just come to tell you that I'm retiring." And I said, "You are?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "And I want to thank you." And the reason she said that was she had a problem. And when she worked for us, we had to let her go. And she would reapply and keep trying to come back to work. And of course, that's on her record that they wouldn't hire her. But she came to me one day and told me she was applying for this job again. Would you believe it was in my office? And she said, told me her situation. And I just told her, I said, okay. I said, here's what we're going to do. Me and you. And she said, nothing went anywhere. I said, but I'll tell them to hire you. But here's the situation. If it ever happens again, if you mess up, you're gone. No ifs, ands, or buts. And you and I know. She said, okay. And she made it.
Yeah, that is something that's special.
Yeah.
What's also special is that she got the opportunity to talk to you about it. Yeah. Well, you know what?
There's others that way.
Yeah. Well, I also see when you tell your own story, there's people, it sounds like, that were in your life that helped guide you when you might have needed it in different directions.
Sure there are. You know, and you know, a lot of that is you build relationships, and I've always been a believer in relationships. I've always told people that work for me, you don't do everything by phone. You get out there and meet the people, find out who they are. If they know you and you know them, you're going to be able to work a lot better. And here's the thing that I always found interesting when we go back to Chilocco. Because of the position I was in, I got to work with, because IHS has facilities all over the country. And periodically we'd have meetings that, you know, different parts of the country. And probably 99% of the time I'd meet somebody from Chilocco. They had a connection to Chilocco. Mm-hmm. That's our common ground. That's how I built a lot of my relationships, was that they find out I went to Chilocco, they went to Chilocco, we had something to talk about, mm-hmm. and we get to know one another. Mm-hmm. And what I found was, and as you know, networking is a big thing if a person will use it, mm-hmm. or how to use it, do it right. When I needed help with something, all I had to do is pick up the phone, and there they were. Yeah. I found that to be a big advantage to me. And as an example, I had one man that worked for me, and he worked for me for years. But he's Indian, but he didn't grow up in the Indian world. Mm-hmm. He didn't know how to relate to Indian people. So when he had to go out and talk to people, meetings or training, he had problems because he doesn't know the culture, so to speak. And yeah. So when he was going to go out, he would occasionally come to me and say, "How is it that you do that? How come you're able to do this? And how come you can talk to them?" And I would tell him, "Hey, you got to know who they are. You got to know how to speak the language. You got to know, physical, the reactions of people. And Indians are different. You got to know who they are." So I would coach him on how to deal with Indian people. And what I like about him was that he retired several years ago. Today he's Indian. He won a big prize in the Red Earth just last week. I saw his name in the paper. He's first place in his category. Wow. And like I said, when he was working with me, he was not Indian. Mm-hmm. Today he is. And I like that. That's, he's learned that. Yeah. But I think in the Indian Health Service, like I said, with Chilocco, I used to occasionally go to Cherokee, North Carolina. And there were Cherokees that came here to Chilocco from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And one of my trips that I was there, I was talking to the administrative officer there that I was working with at the hospital. And I told her, I said, "I know some Cherokees that I went to school with that live here." And she asked me who they were, and I told her. And she said, "Yeah, she told me where they were." And one of them happened to be my roommate one year, part of the year, and I told her his name, and she said, "He's sitting right over here in the conference room." And one day while I was there, I guess she told him I was there, and several of them came by to see me. So the Chilocco connection goes a long way. Yeah. I go to Florida, same thing. There's Chilocco people there. Mm-hmm. I go to Phoenix, I go to California, I go to Portland, different Denver. Yeah. I nearly every time would find Chilocco people.
Do you think that people that went to other Indian schools have the same experience?
I would hope they do. But particularly the Haskell people, I think they do. Just from speaking to them, talking to people, I think they do. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's a college today, where it was a high school back when we were here.
Right. Yeah. So why do you come to the reunions?
Why do I come? Probably because my wife wants to come. Because I look at it this way. Technically, I'm not a graduate of Chilocco. By that, I mean, Yeah, I graduated postgraduate, but I didn't go to high school here. But at the same time, I've got the same friends. There are some that I want to see that I know are going to be here, you know. And this is the only time we see one another. And I've got one friend that's here now today. I had to laugh at him because after we left school, of course, I didn't see him for a number of years. And we happened to be at the Creek Nation Rodeo one year. It's been 30, 40 years ago now. But he was riding. He's getting bucked off this horse or something, you know. And after he got done, my wife and I went around to find him to talk to him. And, you know, that's why I say you see these guys, and of course, over the years, I've seen him here and there, you know, not regularly, but now he's been coming to the reunion. And so this is probably the only time I'll see him till next year, if we both make it back, you know. And many of them, like I said, this is when we see one another.
Well, that makes sense. I was just curious. Everyone has similar reasons, but different reasons at the same time, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But my wife, like I said, she's a graduate, so, you know, a lot of her classmates are here. They come.
Yeah. It seems like you share an experience, like you all share that experience of being on campus.
Yeah, we do. And some of the friends are her classmates that she has, because, of course, when she's around them, I'm there. Now I've gotten to know them, you know, so I'm not excluded, you know, from their group, you know, when they are sitting around talking and cutting up.
Yeah, that's one thing I've appreciated the last few years that I've gotten to come to this, is there's always a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, but it's good to see. Well, I don't have anything else to ask. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about?
No, not really. I just answered your questions.
You did, and I really appreciate it. I know you got a little bit cornered to come in. I'm glad, I'm glad you did. It was an interesting perspective.
Charmaine was my sister's classmate.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So she knows who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, she takes care of business. So.